Florence, neat presentation with your painted color wheel. Let's see. Well, maybe there could be a little less interval around yellow. And what do you think? The violets, perhaps they could be made better by adding a tiny touch of white. Colors that use ultramarine are often improved by just the tiniest hint of white. It brings out the hue. You had a lot of fun with your digital color wheel. This is lovely. I checked the RGB values for your primaries and secondaries, and they look good. With regard to the drawing, well, better than the pencil tool is the pen tool, but it's not easy to learn. We can also look at live trace in future. Hi Heather, here's your painted color wheel. Things look pretty good. Maybe between blue and violet there could be more interval there. And do you think that red violet is looking sufficiently red? Something to check. Otherwise things look pretty good. What a nice neat presentation with your digital color wheel. Your RGB values are good for the primaries and secondaries. The only thing I might suggest is that you could look at interval. I'm regarding this on a color calibrated screen, and I noticed that there's more interval between the colors on either side of cyan, for instance, compared to the colors on either side of red. Hello, Nicole. You know, your painted color wheel looks quite nice. Let's see. Maybe there could be a little less interval on either side of blue and on either side of yellow. And with violets, add a tiny touch of white to reveal the hue. Your digital color wheel is quite lovely. You know, it might suggest windmills or maybe ballet students practicing their pirouettes. Let's see, you know, when I zoom in, I am seeing a little tiny bit of green in places where you wouldn't expect to. So I want you to check that. Also, pay attention to the way that the art is placed on the background. Kimberly, thanks for doing such a neat job of presenting your painted color wheel here. Now let's see, I'm wondering about greens. For the best green, you'll want to use something like a cerulean blue. And let's see, with regard to the blue, I wonder if you added a teeny bit of white. I think that the blue might be too light. It shouldn't obviously look like a tint. And I would say add a tiny touch of white to the violets to bring out the hue there. Hello, Noana. Yours is another example of a very carefully assembled color wheel. Thank you for the care you took here. You know, the only thing I would say is that maybe your red violet doesn't look quite right. And I'm guessing that that could be because you don't have the right red. And I would go with a red that is leaning in the direction of violet already, such as the quinacridone red. Trisha, nice presentation with your painted color wheel. This looks almost perfect. Let's see. You know, it's in the violet department that we have a little trouble. Your red violet is looking magenta. Magenta is a color belonging to the digital color wheel instead. The blue violet, that looks awfully brown, doesn't it? I have the feeling that it might have been made with a red such as a cadmium. I'd say use a quinacridone red, a red that leans in the direction of violet. Now your digital color wheel, clearly a lot of care went into placing everything. The spacing looks very good. The primaries and secondaries stand out, obviously, and your RGB values are good too. I would say pay attention to the way that the whole design is cropped. Notice that there's no extra space on right and left, and there's more extra space on top, for example. I want you to steer away from using a popular logo in your art. In art school, I think that we need to place emphasis on originality. I'm glad that you've done something that you can be enthusiastic about, but I'm going to push you in another direction for future. Tara, or is it Tara? This is a nice digital color wheel. I enjoy the cascading quality to it. Many of these colors are fully saturated, but I don't see ideal instances of, say, red or cyan. By the way, I'm glad to see red and cyan directly opposed from each other. That should also be the case with green and magenta. blue and orange seem to work out okay. I noticed that there are 28 steps here, and the assignment says at least 24, but you know, in order to space the colors properly, you'd need to be working with multiples of 6. Hi, Jacqueline. You know, the course calls for a scan rather than a digital photo, and there are a couple of problems with digital photos. First, it's hard to get the lighting even, and second, well, there can be problems with focus, which is something going on here, but your colors look pretty good. Maybe there were a couple of oranges where the interval could be greater. You know, I took a look at your digital color wheel in the context of the drafts, and I gave you a bunch of ideas there. I want to refer you to that for ideas about this work. Well, hi, Amy. You know, your painted color wheel looks pretty good. It's terribly blurry, though. I wonder what happened. We need to get that under control. There's a little bit of a resolution issue with your digital color wheel, too. I'm going to refer you to the announcement that's called Computers, Software, and Image Preparation. It should be bottom of the list of announcements. Well, in your painted color wheel, things look quite good. I'd say maybe blue, violet, and violet could be a little more different, and possibly red violet could look a little more violet. I wonder if that has to do with the red that you used there. Now, with the digital color wheel, well, orange is not a primary or secondary in this case. Also, colors should be at full saturation and the ideal should be used too. So I want you to take a look at that lesson that I made for you. Ad O'Neill, hey, I can see you took a lot of time and care to assemble this painted color wheel. Now, let's see. If I were you, I would use a cerulean blue for mixing greens. Notice how your green is kind of an army green color. You need a blue that leans a little in the direction of green. And let's take a look at that violet. It's awfully dark. A tiny touch of white would probably reveal the hue there. And lastly, I'd say switch your orange and red orange. Milana, what a lovely job you've done in assembling this painted color wheel. Gee, there's hardly anything I can see here to recommend to you. Maybe blue and blue-violet are a little similar. There might be more interval there. Now, this is a very fine digital color wheel. I noticed that it seems that you've got a handle on the software. Your RGB values look very good. Let's see. Well, maybe there are a couple of places where you could adjust the interval. Even if you've calculated it mathematically, it's not a bad idea to adjust for what the eye sees. My monitor is calibrated. I'm looking at this in Photoshop, and I wonder whether there are a couple of blues that look awfully similar. And the last thing I'd say is mind how the background fits into the whole composition. In other words, you've got a little extra background on the right side.